We live in a world where we constantly encounter others, sometimes with love, sometimes with indifference, and at other times with harm. The human experience is deeply shaped by our interactions with those around us, from the ones we cherish to the strangers who cross our paths. But there is a particular kind of harm that goes beyond the mere accident or misunderstanding. It is the kind of harm that is delivered intentionally. It is calculated, deliberate, and often devastating. We've all been there, haven't we? Those moments where someone, perhaps someone we trusted, someone we loved, caused us pain that seemed too great to bear. Whether it was a cruel word, a betrayal of confidence, or an act of selfishness, the effect was the same. The harm done was not by mistake. It was intentional. It was a decision made by another person with full awareness of the damage they would cause. But what is the real cost of such damage? How do we begin to understand the deep emotional toll of being harmed by someone who knew exactly what they were doing? And most importantly, how do we recover from this kind of injury, especially when it feels as if the world has turned against us? Today, I ask you to reflect on these questions not merely as a matter of intellectual curiosity, but as a matter of personal experience. For many of us, the scars of intentional harm are not just stories to tell. They are chapters of our own lives, and they shape who we are. We may have been damaged by betrayal, words meant to wound, actions designed to control or degrade, or perhaps even by the silence of someone who could have acted but chose not to. Whatever the form, the pain is real. And as we explore this difficult subject, I want us to confront not only the actions of others, but also the ways we respond to them. For when someone intentionally damages us, the temptation is often to retaliate, to seek revenge, to let the damage define who we are and what we become. The challenge before us, however, is not merely to ask, "Why did this happen?" or "Who is to blame?" but to ask, "What do I do now?" You see, the damage that has been inflicted upon you was never the end of the story. It may have been a defining moment, but it does not have to define you forever. There is a profound difference between being harmed and being broken. Yes, harm leaves scars, and yes, scars can feel like an anchor weighing us down, but they also serve as reminders of the strength we have when we choose to rise, when we choose to heal, and when we choose to move forward. So what does it mean when we say, "They damage you intentionally"? To answer that, we must first confront the reality of what intentional harm looks like, how it affects us, and how it can shape our view of the world. But we must also recognize that how we respond to that damage is where true freedom lies. Intentional harm is not simply an accident. It is not the result of a careless word or an offhand remark that was never meant to hurt. No, intentional harm is calculated. It is an act committed with the knowledge that it will cause injury. It may come in the form of a spiteful comment, a deliberate betrayal of trust, or an act of malice designed to break the spirit of another. But what makes this form of harm so insidious is that it is done on purpose. The perpetrator is aware of the suffering they are causing, yet they proceed, often without remorse, believing their actions are justified or warranted. For the one on the receiving end, this is a shock to the system. It is not the result of some misunderstood interaction or an unfortunate circumstance. It is instead a direct attack, and such an attack can leave wounds that are not easily healed. Emotional pain from intentional harm often cuts deeper than physical wounds, because it strikes at the heart of our sense of safety and trust. It causes us to question everything. Why did they do this? What did I do to deserve this? How could someone I trusted or even loved act in such a way? When the harm is intentional, especially when it comes from someone we trust, betrayal enters the equation. Betrayal is perhaps one of the most profound wounds we can experience. To have someone close to us act in a way that intentionally damages us, whether through deceit, manipulation, or cruelty, makes us question not only the individual, but the very nature of trust itself. Betrayal has a unique power to damage our sense of self-worth. It tells us that we were not valued, that we were used, that the relationship was never what we believed it to be. It makes us wonder, perhaps for the first time, whether we are worthy of kindness or respect. Betrayal often leaves us vulnerable, unsure of whom we can trust in the future. It does not merely break our relationship with another person, it can shatter our relationship with ourselves. And yet, betrayal is not the end of the story. If we let it, betrayal can consume us, turning us into people who see the world only through the lens of hurt. But if we choose to look beyond the pain, we might find that there is healing and growth that can arise from it. The damage done to us was real, but the damage need not be permanent. When we are hurt, especially by intentional harm, anger is a natural and justifiable response. How could we not feel enraged, hurt, or bitter? How could we not want to lash out to make the one who harmed us feel the same way we do? Anger is a powerful emotion that can both protect and destroy us. It can fuel us in the moment, giving us the strength to stand up for ourselves, but if left unchecked, it can grow into resentment, bitterness, and ultimately a prison of our own making. Resentment, when allowed to fester, becomes a poison that seeps into every part of our lives. It clouds our judgment, distorts our perceptions, and keeps us locked in a cycle of suffering. The challenge, then, is not to deny our anger, but to recognize it for what it is, a response to an injustice that we must confront and move through. To forgive, to heal, and to rise above the damage done, we must first face our anger and not allow it to define us. When someone harms us intentionally, it can be tempting to seek revenge. After all, how can justice be served unless the perpetrator feels the weight of their actions? How can we find peace if we do not make them understand the pain they caused? Revenge feels like an immediate solution to the deep wounds of intentional harm. It promises an eye for an eye, a balance to the scales of hurt. Yet we must ask ourselves, what does revenge truly accomplish? Revenge may provide temporary satisfaction, but it does not heal the soul. It only prolongs the cycle of harm, passing pain from one person to another. It may feel justified, but it leaves us forever trapped in the past, forever locked in the role of the victim. True healing comes not from punishing others, but from choosing not to be bound by the harm they have done. Forgiveness is often misunderstood. It is not about excusing the harm or pretending it never happened. It is not about dismissing the damage that was done. Rather, forgiveness is about freeing oneself from the grip that the wrongdoer has over us. When we forgive, we are not saying that the harm was right. We are saying that we will not let it define our future. We are choosing to release the control that the injury holds over us. Forgiveness is, therefore, a form of freedom, a freedom that is within our power to claim, no matter the harm that was done to us. It is a choice to move forward with dignity, not to be defined by the injury, but to rise above it. Finally, redemption is a path available not only to the one who has inflicted harm, but to the one who has been harmed as well. Healing is not simply about mending wounds, it is about transformation. It is about reclaiming power over one's life, even in the face of great suffering. Redemption comes not from retribution or revenge, but from choosing to embrace the possibility of a future unshackled by past harm. Even the one who caused the harm can find redemption, should they choose to face their actions, acknowledge the pain they've caused, and seek to make amends. In this way, both the harmed and the perpetrator have the potential to transcend the damage and move forward in a way that brings healing. They damaged you intentionally. This is the undeniable truth. But it is not the final truth. It is not the end of your story. The question is not whether you were harmed, but how you will respond to that harm. Will you allow the damage to define you? Will you seek revenge? Will you hold on to resentment and let it poison your future? Or will you rise above, choosing forgiveness, healing, and redemption? The choice is yours, and it is in the response that your true freedom lies. Ladies and gentlemen, as we come to the end of our reflection on the title, They Damaged You Intentionally, I invite you to consider not the harm itself, but the opportunity that lies in how we choose to respond to it. The damage inflicted upon us, whether physical, emotional, or psychological, was real and often devastating. But the true weight of that damage is not found in the injury itself, but in the way we allow it to shape us in the long term. When someone harms us intentionally, it can feel as though we are at the mercy of forces beyond our control. The actions of others can shake us to our core, making us question not only their motivations, but also our worth. In those moments, it is easy to believe that the harm done to us will define our lives. We may carry the burden of anger, resentment, or bitterness for years, holding on to the idea that until the wrongdoer acknowledges their actions or pays for their wrongs, we will never find peace. But this is a dangerous path, one that ultimately traps us in the past and prevents us from moving forward. The real challenge lies not in the fact of the harm, but in how we respond. Will we allow the damage to be the defining characteristic of our lives? Will we become the victim who is forever shaped by what was done to us? Or will we choose to transcend it, using our response to elevate our sense of self and humanity? The path of revenge, resentment, or self-pity may seem like a natural response, but it is a path that leads to further harm. It binds us to the very people who sought to hurt us, and ensures that their actions continue to have a hold over us. Instead, we are offered a different route, the route of forgiveness and healing. Forgiveness does not mean that we excuse the harm done or pretend it never happened. It does not mean that we deny the pain or the injustice we experienced. Rather, forgiveness is a conscious decision to release ourselves from the hold of the one who has wronged us. It is the act of claiming our freedom, not by punishing the wrongdoer, but by refusing to let their actions control our future. Through forgiveness, we break the chains that bind us to the past and allow ourselves the possibility of renewal. Healing in this context is a personal journey. It is a journey that requires us to confront our pain, acknowledge its depth, and make the decision to move beyond it. This is not an easy or instantaneous process. Healing takes time, patience, and courage. But it is a path that leads to greater strength, resilience, and wisdom. Furthermore, there is the possibility of redemption for both the one who harmed and the one who was harmed. For the wrongdoer, redemption comes through repentance, accountability, and a genuine desire to make amends. For the victim, redemption comes through the process of healing and choosing to rise above the damage done. By choosing forgiveness and growth, both parties have the potential to transform, transcending the harm that once seemed insurmountable. In the end, we must recognize that while others may damage us intentionally, they do not have the final say in who we become. We possess the power to choose our response, to determine our future, and to reclaim our lives. The wounds of the past, though real and painful, do not have to define us. The response we choose today will shape the story of who we are tomorrow. So, I urge you, as you leave here today, to reflect not on the injustice you may have suffered, but on the strength you possess to heal and rise above it. Your story is still being written, and you have the power to choose what the next chapter will look like. Will it be one of anger and resentment, or one of forgiveness, healing, and transformation? The choice is yours.